the economy is weakening, right? They are, trying to figure out what to do. Trump is starting to roll back tariffs left and right, recognizing that they're not doing what he had hoped, but the economy is in trouble. He's trying to find ways to lower prices because affordability is the big problem, and he worsened that problem with his tariffs. And so now he's trying to reduce prices by removing tariffs without admitting that the tariffs are causing prices to be higher, which is obvious because if removing tariffs lowers prices, then imposing them has to raise prices. It's impossible for that not to be the case. But also, the other thing that I think is going to help the gold market is the air coming out of the Bitcoin bubble and the crypto bubble. And, no better example of what's going on there is in the stocks, these companies. And MicroStrategy, a warning, because I think it was Morgan Stanley that came out and said, there's a good chance that the indexes, the global stock market indexes, like the world MRCI index, that they're going to kick MicroStrategy stock out of the index. And that means that companies that are tied to those indexes that now own MicroStrategy or Strategy. I keep using the old name. I joked they should have changed the name to Micro because that's where the stock is going as opposed to Strategy. I saw some joke online where they named the company Tragedy instead of Strategy. Tragedy is probably another good name for the company. But anyway, it's Strategy. But if Strategy is kicked out of these indexes, that means a lot of index funds that bought it are going to sell it. Now, I 100% agree that Strategy never should have been added to those index funds in the first place because it's not a viable business. I mean, there is some kind of software business buried beneath that Bitcoin balance sheet, but it is so small, it is inconsequential to the stock. All MicroStrategy is a levered Bitcoin ETF. And why should an ETF be in an index of stocks, right? It shouldn't be. And if you are trying to buy stocks, which are operating businesses, right, that are expected to make profits by producing goods or performing services, you shouldn't be forced to buy MicroStrategy just because it's been added to an index that it never should have been a part of. And so I think it's a smart move to get rid of it. But, that will also help undercut its prestige and whatever demand there was for its shares. But, I have challenged Michael Saylor. He won't accept the challenge to debate the very premise of his business. I think the whole business model is a fraud. I think it's a sham of a company, and it eventually has to implode. Now, it may already be doing that if you look at the stock price. And you look at the stock price of all the copycat companies, the other Bitcoin treasury companies that have gone down even more than the 70% that Strategy has gone down. But Strategy is not even close to finishing this bear market. But I think as the air comes out of the Bitcoin bubble, where are disgruntled Bitcoiners going to go? Well, obviously, I mean, some of them, may try to gamble, with other, tech companies or who knows, right? There's some part of the Bitcoin trade that isn't really looking for an alternative to the dollar or looking to gold, but there certainly is a percentage of people in Bitcoin that were under the delusion that they were buying some kind of supercharged version of gold, that it was digital gold. And so they bought it. But now that its performance is so bad and the performance of actual gold is so good in comparison, I think a lot of that money is going to start moving into gold. And I think a lot of the money that maybe was on the sidelines, that wasn't buying gold or Bitcoin, but where Bitcoin was kind of killing the gold story, I think now that, the Bitcoin, fever has broke, and now the gold story, looks a lot better to a lot of fund managers who now are not going to say, well, gold, what about Bitcoin? People might buy Bitcoin instead of gold. It's going to be pretty obvious that that's not the case. The central banks want no part of Bitcoin. They're buying gold. And so investors are going to be discovering gold. I think we've already seen the lows for this pullback. We've seen the lows in silver. We've seen the lows in gold. We've seen the lows in this pullback in the mining stocks. And we are all pumped and ready to go, hitting new highs, probably even before the December FOMC meeting. Normally in, the crypto land, Thanksgiving is supposed to be the holiday where everybody is out proselytizing and getting new converts, right? Because, last Thanksgiving, all the crypto guys are, coming home for Thanksgiving, talking to their parents or their siblings or other relatives who are gathered around. And they tell them about how much money they made in Bitcoin and try to get them to, buy. Because again, the Bitcoiners are the Hare Krishners of the investment world because it's a cult, but it needs to expand, right? The only way to keep this thing going is to bring in new suckers. You need new people to buy in so the people that already bought in can get out, right? That's the whole nature of the beast. That's the greater fool theory. So a lot of the greater fools were brought in around the holidays, right? Because the triumphant Bitcoiners would return home to brag about all the money they made during the year. And, since last Thanksgiving, hey, Uncle Joe, did you buy that Bitcoin like I told you? It's going to the moon, right? Look at it now, right? Oh, shoot, I didn't buy it. Oh, I'll buy some, right? Everybody wants to talk about it. Well, what are the Bitcoin conversations going to be like this Thanksgiving when Bitcoin is basically the worst performing asset on the year, right? I don't know, it's down 5 or 10% so far this year, but it could be down even more by Thanksgiving. We got a couple more days. We talk about Black Friday. It could be a black and blue Friday for crypto because the chart still looks really bad. I mean, Bitcoin is, 87,000 and change. It's way below 100,000. But just like I think gold and silver stocks are now leading gold higher, crypto stocks are leading Bitcoin lower. You're seeing the profound weakness in these companies. And of course, remember, these companies have been a source of demand. They've been buying up these Bitcoin treasury companies, right? Well, they're going to start selling. I mean, this whole thing is collapsing. So I think now, to the extent that people are going to be talking about Bitcoin around Thanksgiving dinner, it's going to be about how much they lost in Bitcoin, right? Because a lot of people might have bought some Bitcoin after last Thanksgiving in November when Bitcoin was above 100,000, right? It got, and now it's substantially below. In the meantime, they missed out on more than a 50% gain in gold and more than a double in gold mining stocks. Some of them tripled or quadrupled. So that's where the real money was made. People got destroyed, right? They lost way more money in crypto stocks than they lost in Bitcoin. But if you compare how much money you lost, somebody maybe put 10 grand into Bitcoin stocks, some kind of crypto stocks at the beginning of the year, and their 10 grand is worth 3 or 4,000. Whereas had they put it in gold stocks, it'd be worth 20 or 30,000, right? So it's a huge difference, like a tenfold difference between where they are now in crypto stocks and where they would have been in gold mining stocks. So it's not going to be a Merry Christmas, I think, for the crypto crowd. And people online were expressing a lot of hate for me, like this past week as I was, posting about Bitcoin going down. And of course, I don't only post about Bitcoin when it's going down. I post about it when it's going up too. And I tell people to sell, right? And not, it's not like I'm buried when Bitcoin was making new highs. I was out there saying, this is ridiculous, right? This is a bubble, right? So it's not like I only post when Bitcoin is falling, but maybe some of the Bitcoiners, that's the only time they notice my posts is when Bitcoin is going down. But a lot of them are just calling me like I'm a nasty person, I'm a mean person, that I'm celebrating people losing money. No, I'm not. I'm not glad that people are losing money. Although, first of all, what's so ridiculous is these Bitcoiners, they come out and say they don't care about the price of Bitcoin because they measure their wealth in Bitcoin, right? Doesn't matter the exchange rate to the dollar. If you own one Bitcoin, you own one Bitcoin, right? And all they care about is increasing their stack. Well, if that's the case, then no Bitcoiner has lost anything. Who cares what the price is? In fact, now you can buy more for less. So, basically this is great news. If you're a true Bitcoiner, the lower the price, the better, because you can get more Bitcoin. If that's all you care about is having more Bitcoin, well, the lower the price goes, the more Bitcoin you could afford, right? So obviously, they should be happy about this. So, I'm not, rubbing salt in the wound. This is good, right? This is good news, and if Bitcoin keeps falling, 50,000, even better. 20,000, great. 10,000, ecstatic, right? The more for you, right? Keep falling, and you can buy more Bitcoin. But yes, there are a lot of people that are not happy who bought Bitcoin, who wanted it to go up because they want to sell it and make some money. And I'm not glad that people are losing money. In fact, I did everything I can to prevent people from buying Bitcoin in the first place. Now, clearly, obviously, people who ignored me 10 years ago and bought Bitcoin anyway, they made a lot of money, assuming they're smart enough to get out. A lot of them won't be, and they'll end up losing whatever they thought they made. But clearly, the people who bought Bitcoin in recent years are worse off. Not only because Bitcoin is down, but because the other things they could have bought, like gold or mining stocks, have gone way up, and they didn't buy those things. But I am not happy that people are losing money. Now, I will be happy if the Bitcoin bubble collapses, not because the people that own Bitcoin lose money. I already know they're going to lose money. It's because new people didn't get suckered in. See, I'm happy about the losses that won't take place. See, the higher Bitcoin goes, the more people are going to be suckered in to buying it. And so the more people who are going to ultimately lose money. So if Bitcoin really falls and that causes people not to want to buy it anymore, that's great, because now people who might have lost money buying Bitcoin aren't going to lose their money because they're not going to buy Bitcoin. Now, is that bad for the people who already own Bitcoin and want to sell it? Sure, right? But that's their own fault. I've done whatever I can to get people, out of this thing before the music stops. But it's not just, the loss of money from individual investors. I've said that I believe that Bitcoin is extremely damaging to the U.S. economy because resources and capital, including human capital, labor, are being misdirected into this industry that would otherwise have been used more productively. So I don't like the fact that our resources are being squandered, that so much of our capital and some of the smartest, young people around are wasting their talents on crypto when they could be doing something that would be far more productive and beneficial for the rest of us. And so the sooner the air comes out of this bubble, the better. The less damage that the bubble will do to the economy. And the damage is done while the bubble is inflating. That's always the case, whether it's housing, student loans, wherever capital is misdirected by government. The mistakes are made when the capital is misallocated and the malinvestments are funded, right? Except when we're making the mistakes And that may be over-investing in AI data centers, right? But when the mistakes are being made, it feels good because everybody's happy and, markets are going up and it looks like there's this real boom. But that's where you're having the overinvestment or the misallocation or the malinvestment. It's when the bubble pops that the mistakes are revealed, right? That's not what causes the problem. That's basically what exposes it. And that's the beginning of the cure, right? That's what corrects the imbalances. That's what sets the stage for healthy economic growth, right? And that's what's coming. So the sooner the air comes out of that Bitcoin bubble, the sooner we expose all of the problems that we created during the bubble, and now we can start repairing the damage and reallocating resources. Like I mentioned on the my spaces today, the first rule of holes is when you're in one, you stop digging. And we are in a huge hole thanks to crypto. And the longer this goes on, the bigger the economic hole we dig for ourselves. So the sooner we stop digging the hole, well, then it's easier to climb out of a hole that's not as big. And so, yes, I am happy about those things happening, but don't confuse that with saying, yeah, I'm happy that people are going to find out that they've lost a lot of money. I'm not happy about anybody losing money. But, the one consolation, I think, is that a lot of the people in crypto are young. And that's the best time to lose money, right? When you're young, right? Because A, you have a lot of time to earn it back. And you have a lot of time to learn a lesson, right? Losing some money in Bitcoin could end up being a valuable lesson that prevents you from losing a lot more money in something else in the future. So the young people, they'll get a nice lesson in life. They'll learn it the hard way, but maybe they'll learn it the good way. I feel bad for the older people my age, who might have put their retirement money into this Ponzi and who will lose money that they never have a chance to earn back. And they don't have enough years left to learn anything valuable from the lesson, right? It's too late to learn the lesson if now you're too old to earn any more money and benefit from it. So that is a problem. And I hope that I've done something. People think, hey, don't I feel guilty about all the people who didn't buy Bitcoin because of me? No, I don't feel guilty. But I do think that I'm going to save a lot of people who might otherwise have gotten wiped out in Bitcoin. And by the way, a lot of people who bought Bitcoin early, who bought it 10 or 15 years ago, bought it because of me, right? Not because I encouraged them to buy it, but because I educated them about economics, about sound money, fiat money, the Fed. And as a result of that, right, I put them on this road. And ultimately that road led them to Bitcoin, right? They took a tangent somewhere, right? Made a wrong turn on that road, right? And they ended up at Bitcoin. But if it wasn't for me, they never would have gotten on that road in the first place. And because they got on that road, they ended up at Bitcoin, and they thank me for it. They credit me for it, and they say, you're the reason I made all this money in Bitcoin. So, some people made money in Bitcoin because of me too. But the bad part about it is the reason these early adopters who may have bought Bitcoin because of me, the reason they made money is because somebody else is going to lose it. That is the sad part, that all of the profits that the early adopters, the early buyers realized on their Bitcoin will come at the expense of a far greater number of people who realize significant losses. Because there is no wealth that was created here by this Bitcoin mania, right? Money was transferred from the people who sold Bitcoin to the people who bought it. So the people who sold it cashed out with the money that the later people put in. But those people will never get anything out because there won't be another group of fools to pay a higher price. They end up as the bag holder, and then everything collapses, and the Bitcoin they own is worthless. But the people who they bought it from, right, they got cash and they did something with it. They bought real assets, They bought real estate, they bought stocks, they bought gold, or they just spent it, right? They bought cars, they took vacations, they enjoyed themselves. But all of that was paid for by the final round of fools who is stuck holding the bag.